Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar offered by Solarplaza International. Today's webinar is all about navigating O&M challenges for utilities and off-takers. My name is Nicola Belfatti. I'm a project manager at Solarplaza and organizer of the Solarplaza Summit Asset Management North America. I'll say a couple of words about Solarplaza before introducing the speakers of today's session. For those who don't know us, our goal is to positively impact the world by accelerating the sustainable energy transition. And we do that from our office in Rotterdam, in the Netherlands. So we're a Dutch company, and we were established in 2004, and this year marks a pretty good milestone for us because it's the 20th anniversary, and we're very happy and proud, and we can't wait to celebrate with you guys at our upcoming conferences. About what we do, we've organized more than 200 conferences all over the world, managing to connect more than 60,000 solar experts. The webinar of today is part of the Solarplaza Asset Management Conference in North America, the so-called AMNA or SAMNA conference. And it's a great opportunity for companies like yours to attend and get the latest insight from key industry players. And we'll be discussing both technical, financial, and commercial asset management topics. It's on the 9th and 10th of April in San Diego, which is really beautiful in spring. So if you haven't put in your agenda yet, don't forget to do so. Before I introduce the speakers, a couple of practical notes. So for the attendees online, if you have any questions during the webinar, you can use the chat box on the right screen of on the right side of your screen, and the moderator James will be addressing them either during the session or at the end of it during the Q&A. Same thing goes for any technical issues that you might encounter. Just use the same chat box, and my team and I will be here to help you immediately. The presentation, so the slides and the recordings will be available in a couple of days after the session. You will receive an email anyway with all the instructions on how to basically download the material. And now, of course, I'd like to introduce our three great speakers, starting off with James Nagel. He's the COO and co-founder of HelioVolta. There he is. HelioVolta is the developer of the SolarGrade software, but I'm pretty sure James will tell you all about it later on in his presentation. And together with him, there is Steven Branscum. He's a senior project manager for energy efficiency at Walmart. There he is. And last but not least, Zack Townsend. He works as a director of DG optimization. Hi, Zack, for Luminace. And now, so I'd like James to turn on your camera and microphone. Yeah, there you are. And the floor is yours. Good luck.
Excellent. Well, yeah, thanks, Nicola. Thanks so much. Yeah, and so today, right, we went through some quick introductions of our individuals here. Steven, I didn't know you were a drag racer. That was a new one for me. I see your bio there. But yeah, so I'm excited about our conversation today. And really, this is kind of a preview of a lot of the conversations that'll be happening at AMNA in early April. So big thank you to Solarplaza for hosting this webinar. So yeah, with that, we'll kind of just jump in right here. So again, I'm James Nagel. I'm co-founder of HelioVolta. We're the providers of SolarGrade. We'll get into that in a moment. And I'm joined by Zack and Steven, and we'll go through a couple more intros really quick. So before that, I just, we have a lot of different parties on the call here, and Luminace and Walmart. Might be coming at the industry from slightly different perspectives, but really, when we think about conflict management, it's really important to align on a common interest. We talk about interests and positions a lot, but we can really align on a common interest where we want reliable, proactive, or productive assets that last through their full PPA term and beyond, right? And so how do we do that? And so we've really aligned here on proactive, not reactive asset management, so that that projects are more productive and projects are more reliable. possible. And those go hand in hand a lot of the time. So with that, I will pass it over to Luminace, to Zack, to just run through, what is Luminace's approach to the market.
Sure. Yeah, thanks, James. Morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Zack Townsend, Director of DG Optimization at Luminace. Luminace is a fully integrated distributed energy resources platform, and we're currently the largest owner operator of distributed generation assets in the US. We currently have about 4.6 gigawatts of assets that are either in operations, development, or active constructions. We have a presence across the US in 31 different markets with a ton of different regional diversity, both in project types and off-takers, and currently have about 150 employees. My team specifically oversees our special projects on the operations side. Historically, I've been a part of the asset management team, but I'm now focusing more on some of the major rehabilitation projects that we have, repowers, and other special projects among our team. James, do you mind flipping to the next slide? Luminace has a wide variety of different decarbonization as a service asset types that we'll invest in and operate, including solar, energy efficiency, EV solutions, fuel cells. And so our goal is to provide a wide variety of green energy services to our customers as possible. We operate all of our projects under long-term power purchase agreements, and also have O&M contract providers on all of our assets. So we as a company are heavily reliant on the partnerships that we have with our vendors in order to keep the projects running as efficiently and performing as well as possible. And with that, I'll turn it over to Stephen to give a little bit of a background on himself and Walmart.
Yeah, I'm Stephen Branscum. My job function changes all the time, but I've historically, for the last quite a few years, kind of been in charge of design, engineering, construction, commissioning, O&M, asset management, and end of life for all of our solar fleet, solar, EV, battery, fuel cell for Walmart. So here recently, that has changed just slightly. About 3 weeks ago, I no longer do construction for solar. I just so since they put me basically to part-time, according to them, I've taken on some exterior lighting projects. So I now run the exterior lighting for Walmart also. So that's fun. But we, as you can see on the slide, we have a goal of being 100% renewable. So we're aggressively pursuing solar as part of that. And then next slide, we're obviously a little Arkansas-based company that we've got a few stores across the U.S. and Puerto Rico that I manage the solar for. So you can see some stats on our fleet. But we're excited. We're excited to do on-site solar. We want to do a lot more. So we're ramping up to grow the program even more.
Right on. Thanks, Stephen. And just a quick bit about HelioVolta and SolarGrade. HelioVolta is the provider and creator of SolarGrade, which is a fieldwork software for proactive technical asset management. And it's built by a team that's been in this industry for a long time. We've worked on a lot of root cause analyses, had to step in as expert witness and help with corrective actions, and helping to rebuild a lot of operational teams. And so in a lot of that work, we didn't find a good fieldwork management platform. And so that's what we built, right? And so really understanding a lot of the pain points there in that field work where teams are under a lot of pressure to do work quickly. But when that happens, a lot of times quality can be sacrificed. And as we are constantly pushed towards reducing costs, right, reducing OpEx, what gets trimmed out in that. So that was another pretty big pain point there. And the teams that are doing this work in the field really are still using kind of 20th century tools, Excel, paper, kind of generic softwares at best. And so that's what we built with SolarGrade is the tool that we wish existed for the industry. And so effectively, what we do is really wrap the field teams into the technical asset management in a much more robust way, so that the work that they're doing in the field is better appreciated by the whole asset management program. And so, as teams go on a project site, that work and if issues come up, the loop can be closed much more quickly through data-driven, actionable information. And so, in that case, in that vein, we kind of treat a lot of the field teams, bringing them into the overall picture there, really thinking about them as an extension of the data acquisition system when we structure their experience on site really well. Great. So that's a little bit about us, but today, right, again, we're having this conversation on O&M challenges and opportunities. And right, this is like kind of a primer for a lot of the conversations in San Diego coming up with the AMNA conference, April 9th and 10th. And so if we run out of time here, we'll all be attending. So just connect with us. We've got some contact information at the end of the presentation here. Reach out. We'll be there. Continue the conversation. And then please, as questions pop up, please put them in the chat here, and we'll try to get to as many as possible after we have kind of our initial conversation there. So a quick plug for your questions as we go through here. Great. So kind of first up is just talking through some of the struggles that we have in the industry and how Luminace and Walmart are tackling those. And so, Zach, I'm gonna start with you here on workforce development, and I wanna underscore or just kind of better define some of the pain points that you see in this segment, and then how have you gone by approaching it? And so, specifically those challenges and insourcing versus outsourcing and all that. So yeah, please, Zach.
Yeah, sure. So I'll kind of talk about the two different avenues that I see here, both with our internal asset management operations team and then with external vendors as well. Internally, one of the things that we've realized, because Luminace as a company was founded by different acquisitions that were merged together, is that at all of those different companies that we blended, for asset managers, there was a different definition of what that job task included, and has led to a diversification of people that are more commercially focused versus more technically focused. And what we have tried to do is blend that together and work with some external third parties, like SEI is a great example of this, to kind of set a baseline of education for our team that we expect our asset managers to go through to have a general level of knowledge on solar, electrical experience, safety, and to be able to provide oversight for our vendors while they're in the field, be able to do a QA, QC check on the work that they're performing. And so we are taking a lot of the onus for training and development of our team internally, and are trying to set up a training program that each of our asset managers go through. Additionally, what we're doing and what we're noticing with some of our third-party O&M providers is that the different providers that we work with have different levels of skills, and a tech one at one company doesn't necessarily mean that person has the same skills as a Tech 1 at another company, and that flows all the way up through Tech 2 and Tech 3 as well. Luminace has been working with SIA in the workforce development initiative that they're actively doing to define the different job task requirements for Tech 1, 2, 3 to hopefully standardize that across the industry, and also get some definition there as some other owner operators like us are trying to understand how the prevailing wage requirements under the IRA are going to impact that as well. Additionally, we've taken some of the job scoping and SOP creation in-house, and that's been a really key focus for our team over the past year, just to try and standardize the quality of deliverables that we're getting from our different providers. And then lastly, and this has been a bit of a pain point for us, is that what we've seen is that there's an opportunity for us to bring some of the O&M job tasks in-house. And that's something that we've been exploring over the past year and have set up a self-perform team internally. But again, going back to that different technician level, as we've gone and tried to hire candidates to fill the positions that we've had, it's been a struggle for us just to find Tech 3s that have the level of experience that we would expect when we're bringing them onto our team.
Yeah, right on. And so it sounds like, right, you're doing a mix of insourcing and outsourcing and bringing, right, maybe that Tech 3 internal when you can. What's your current mix and ideal mix on what gets insourced versus outsourced, and maybe that's by scope. Yeah, I'm kind of curious, like how do you guys approach that?
Right now, I would say 95 to 97% of our work is outsourced via our O&M providers. So we are heavily reliant on our partners to keep our sites running, do the PM inspections, do all of the CM work that's needed on our sites, and are using that 5%, like that last 3 to 5%, with the in-source technicians to take on some more of the upfront scope creation for some of the more difficult job tasks that we have, and also do CM work for us. What we're noticing is that some of that more complex CM work tends to drag out. And also, I mean, just by the nature of third-party O&M provider business models, it's advantageous for them to go to site, take care of the one inverter that's down, and then go to the next one to keep availability or performance guarantee numbers up. Whereas the approach that we're taking with our technicians is if they go to site, it's usually not to do one inverter reset or one troubleshoot, but it will be a site that has had systemic arc fault issues that we think are a result of underlying connector mismatch issues. And so they'll spend all day on site doing a root cause analysis and scope creation. And then we'll look at that scope again when we get it back from our internal technician. And at that point, determine, is this something that they can take on and is reasonable for them to do? Or would we be better served by taking that scope and bidding it out again to another third-party O&M provider that we have project management resources on? And so I think maybe a good way to summarize the approach that we're taking is that we're really trying to determine and set up specializations amongst our team so that we have the right resources taking on the right jobs.
Yeah, fascinating. And so, yeah, right. Moving into a scope-based resource allocation rather than just kind of like a task that can be hired out various spots, and like really making sure that the right team is doing the right work and they're incentivized properly. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, and so Stephen, I might jump over to you because Walmart's trajectory over the past few years has shifted from kind of a off-taker PPA model into, and is in the process of shifting into that ownership model. And so kind of given what Zack talked about there too, and just thinking about how you felt that pain. Maybe we start there with some of the challenges you've seen in that workforce development as well, but also thinking about what led you more towards an insourced trajectory.
Yeah. I mean, I think, long story short, I can mirror everything Zack just said. You can pretty much let him talk, and I'll just shake my head yes, because I'm in agreement with pretty much everything he is just went over. Like we're, you know, keeping consistency among technicians that are getting up on the roof. We've not had any insource. Like everything we've done has been outsourced. Everything we've done up to date, solar wise, has been PPA. So the PPA owner is the one that is contracting with the O&M provider. So we haven't had any control over that, over who gets on our roof, but we've had a lot of issues. So we're like we deal with the consequences. So we've looked at shifting more to an ownership model on the solar side of things, and as part of that, I want to develop a way for us to insource a lot of the work that needs to be, a lot of the O&M work. I mean, we'll obviously start off more like Zack. We'll start off with most everything outsourced, if not everything outsourced to begin with, and then slowly kind of move it insourced. And we'll get into that probably a little bit later as to the why behind it. But definitely I can mirror the consistency needing. Like you said, a Tech 1 at one place is not necessarily equivalent to a Tech 1 somewhere else, and we've seen and had to deal with a lot of issues related to the consistency of who the boots on the ground, who's actually going up on our rooftop or out in our parking lot or a ground mount and performing the work.
And I think that's probably a really good transition point to our next conversation here, where that inconsistency is a pain point that we appreciate and feel. How do you go, and Stephen, I'll start with you. How do you go about qualifying those partners with those third parties? And I'm seeing some good questions coming up in the chat here, so I'll try to weave them in here as well. But how do you qualify those third parties, and what are some of your mechanisms for oversight of those third parties?
So again, to date, everything we've done is PPA. So we haven't historically had a hand in the qualifying who's on our roof, right? So we've taken a role in that because of issues we've had through the years. And anybody that's got a Google search bar can find some of the issues we've had through the years. So because of that, we've taken a more active role. We've reworked our O&M parts of our contract with our PPA providers. The O&M sections, we reworked a lot of that and it started adding a lot of requirements. We've got a lot of O&M guidelines that we've implemented with those partners, and basically said, here's what you need to follow. And we've taken a lot more active role in trying to dictate how O&M's performed on a Walmart store. And then of course we're getting even more active moving forward. But yeah, I mean, we've got to implement a lot of rules. If you're performing this type of work, here's the tech level we want on that site performing that work. Here's the level of oversight. And again, we'll get into it later on how do you get buy-in from your partners. But when you're dealing with third parties, like that's ultimately what I'm looking for. I need more proactivity, and I need more partnership with our third parties, with our O&M providers, especially moving forward. Like I need them to have as much interest in holistically my entire site. Like when you walk up on the roof, you're not just carrying a clipboard with a checklist of, I've got to check this inverter and I've got to look for this alarm, clear this alarm and check this list of things. Like you're looking holistically at the entire system, and you're raising your hand saying, hey, this isn't on my list, but I see this conduit, or I see this issue here that it looks like it's going to become an issue in the near future. It's not causing an alarm yet, but it can in the near term, or even long term. Like we see this, raise our hand and say, you may want to take a look at that. You may want to do something about it. And it doesn't even necessarily, for me personally, it doesn't even necessarily have to be solar related. Just you walk up and you say, hey, this condensation line running from a rooftop unit past all the solar equipment is musted and it's leaking water everywhere. That can cause me an issue. If I have an issue with solar and I start arcing and I've got water all over the roof and trash and debris and whatever else on the roof, like there's a formula for a bad day for me. So that's what I need. I need that proactivity. I need that buy-in from our third parties.
Right. And so, right at the core, that's a different posture. It's a posture we need of that proactive asset management. And so I think we can get into that a little bit here now, is like contractually, how do you incentivize that with those teams on site? Like what are some of the tactics that you've used to get that person to raise their hand necessarily to shift that behavior?
We're actively working on that. I don't have a good answer for you yet. I'm working on that. So historically, what we do, like when you run into problems, the attorneys get a hold of things, right? So the attorneys will go through and say, we need more teeth to the contract. So there's always consequences that are implemented in a contract. But I'm more of the mindset, we need to incentivize good, positive behaviors. So let's add incentives to the contract that says, hey, find a way to incentivize that and find a way to create that buy-in, that skin in the game, so to speak, or that partnership. So I'm looking at that. I'm looking at ways to incentivize without losing control of it, right? So I don't want a million work order tickets opened on a site because you keep finding all these little things. But at the same token, I do want you to find all those little things. So like, how do we incentivize it instead of just threatening, hey, if you miss it, we're coming after you for this, this, and this. Instead of everything being negative, I want it to be positive. So that's what I'm actively trying to pursue, James. I don't have a good answer for that yet, but that's what I'm actively trying to pursue. How do we incentivize it? How do we make things positive? How do we encourage that positive behavior I'm looking for and that proactivity I'm looking for?
Yeah. So come find Steven at the conference, and if you have any ideas, tug on his
Yes, hit me up.
to think through that. Yeah, Zach, let's jump over to you. How do you qualify third parties? I think one particularly interesting thing with Luminace is also like after qualifying them, let's start there, but also like how do you retain them and help them grow in kind of more of a partnership role?
Sure. Yeah. So for us, most of the contracted fixed fee O&M providers that we have are companies that different portions of our team have been working with for generally over 5 years. So we've built long-term relationships with the providers, either from work at Luminace or at the past entities that make up Luminace. And so we've been able to build that up over the long period of time, have come to know the teams very well, and have tried to grow the providers into the regions that they're in with the new projects that we have coming on from our construction team. So the goal is if we find a good partner in a region, we'd like to just keep giving them projects to helping them grow, but also making sure, I think maybe to Stephen's point, that we don't grow them too quickly, because that's something that we've seen and had issues with in the past as well, where giving one partner too many projects can can lead to just a dilution of quality of service. And that can lead to issues with us across the fleet. Now, that being said, that we partner with providers and have those long-term relationships. We also have a method for getting new partners in and breaking into that fixed fee club. And that's via that work specialization that I talked about earlier. So one of our fleets is the Terraform assets, which Brookfield purchased out of bankruptcy from SunEdison, and they were abandoned for a good period of time. And as a result, we have no shortage of corrective maintenance just to catch up and fix some of the sins of the past on those assets. And what our different regional teams have done is use that corrective maintenance almost as a proving ground for new providers to understand, are they going to meet the quality of work that we're expecting? And are they going to go and, when we send them out to do a job task, capture all the issues that we're seeing in the field and give us a scope of work to address everything? Or is it just going to be, hey, you have an inverter out, we're going to go and replace that and not let you know that your wire management is laying on the ground everywhere else across the field? So that's what we've been using to bring vendors on, get them up to snuff on both our quality expectations, but also our safety and work practice documentation expectations as well. And if we have good success doing that, then we'll look at bringing them on under a fixed fee agreement for new construction projects that we have. That's historically how we've looked at and how we'll continue to look at just vendor onboarding. And then in terms of managing the quality and making sure that they or that we're getting the comprehensive look at our assets. I'll again echo Stephen's point, that has certainly been a challenge for our team. It's hard to incentivize providers to go above and beyond and get the documentation and everything corrected that's an issue on site, and do that in a cost-effective manner. So the approach that we've taken there is our team we have about 30 asset managers on our team. And the way that we look at growing and expanding that team is that we like to try and keep our asset managers to under 100 projects. And if at all possible, between 2 to 3 hours of all of the sites under their management. So that way they can provide that almost third party eyes and checkup on our sites. And as part of their KPIs each year to do inspections of projects under their management. And that helps us provide a trust but verify approach with our contractors.
And so when you say like an hour or two from those, it's like literally just travel time to actually get on site,
Right.
With asset managers. Yeah. And so there's a question in the chat, and thanks everybody for these questions. They're fantastic so far. And one of them was just, so those are the asset managers are within that proximity. Someone's also asking about like the insourced technicians,
Sure.
and how are they similarly located regionally, or is there much of a differentiation between the asset manager and those qualified internal technicians?
So for our qualified internal technicians, we've only chosen to look at and have them work in two of the markets that we're in currently, and that's Southern California and then our Mid-Atlantic regions. Those were areas where we had difficulty scaling our third-party O&M business and partnerships, or where we had higher amounts of those legacy Terraform assets, and we could use a little bit of extra help in being able to get all of the corrective maintenance done to get them back up to the level of performance that we'd expect. They are also similarly situated where they're 2 to 3 hours between all of the projects that they're going to perform maintenance on. And for our in-house technicians, we actually try and keep them closer to reduce the drive time to site so that we're not losing potentially 4 hours a day in a tech driving to and from site.
Yeah, yeah, that's a lot. Um, well, right on. So I think that's pretty helpful. Yeah, strategy wise. And I'm thinking, yeah, coming back to um, some of that Terraform portfolio, right? And as we think through other kind of aging assets, I think that's helpful to kind of shift the conversation there, where when you look at new assets coming into a portfolio, how do you qualify those? With handoff, how do you avoid the loss of data in that? Um, and yeah, I'll have a bunch of additional follow-up questions, I'm sure. But yeah, and just like thinking about, both Walmart and Luminace have, uh, you know, all of their projects are not just like a year old. They have a significant lifespan already. And so how do you balance that, right? Where you're out of your EPC warranty period, and the onus is like really on you um, to like maintain it to your level, and you might not have a good starting point. So how have you kind of tackled that, Zach?
Sure. I'll start with the EPC handoff first, because that's a lot easier of a question to answer. So we take the whole development, design, EPC, construction management process in house at Luminace. Luminace employees are involved at every step of the way, and our operations team is involved in the upfront handoff from the design team to design development team to our technical sales team, and then is involved in construction meetings with our project managers throughout the build process. We then have a pretty robust handoff process between construction and operations that starts when a project goes online. It's taken us about 2 years now that we have a combined team to iron out all of the wrinkles between the two teams in that handoff process. But we feel like over the past couple of months that we're finally getting that down to a science and have a little bit better of a handoff process there. We've also put some software tools in place on the asset management side so that some of the inherent knowledge on PPA compliance requirements, EPC contract requirements, lease requirements don't get lost from origination to our asset management team. And so that our team has a way to go in and look at all of those compliance requirements and easily access them and be able to understand what they're taking on with any of their projects. In terms of the aging assets, this has definitely been an area of struggle for our team. I would say that 2/3 of our portfolio we have relatively good documentation for, but the Terraform assets that we own and operate are a little bit more of a challenge there. Buying them out of bankruptcy, having various transfers and acquisitions of the projects led to us losing some of that, not just historic knowledge from the team who was working on those sites previously, but project documents and just in terms of compliance obligations, like unawareness of some of the things that we had to do under certain contracts because these are legacy assets that we didn't have a way of tracking them for. From a pure technology side, I would say that it's taken us about, again, 2 years for us as a business to wrap our heads around all of the the challenges that we have within that fleet. We started off in 2021 by doing what we called an asset condition assessment, where we went out and either our internal asset management team or via a third party went through and did a site inspection of every single Terraform asset in order to understand all of the different issues and complications that we had on those sites. We found a number of sites that had severe backsheet cracking that we considered a severe enough safety risk to shut down sites. We found a portion of assets where the junction boxes had fallen off, they were unpotted and corroded, and again, it was a severe enough safety risk that we took a portion of those sites offline. And then we also have a number of sites that have legacy central inverters that manufacturers are either no longer supporting, or there's no parts for us to get the inverters back up and online. And for each of those different challenges, we're trying to find different solutions to keep those assets running as long as we can. We're looking at a number of strategic repowerings, whether AC or DC, to replace all of the modules on the sites that have had backsheet or junction box issues. We're looking at options to purchase and refurbish legacy 600 volt central inverters when we can, to not necessarily repower, but just use as drop-in replacements on some of those older sites. And then also we're looking at ways that, and I actually just got a proposal back last week from our engineering team to look at replacing some of those legacy 600 volt central inverters with string inverters. So we're looking at different strategies across our fleet to try and keep these assets running as long as we can, and are also taking a proactive approach on the customer facing side as well, and have set up a customer care team that is working with customers once these projects hit 5 years from the end of their PPAs, to start engaging them in conversations, understand what they're looking for at the end of the PPA. Does it make sense for us to redevelop the project if they need to do a roof replacement, instead of us taking down a system that's now 15 to 20 years old and putting that same system back up there? Does it make sense for us to put a new system on there? So we're really trying to take a long-term view of asset management and come up with different solutions to address some of the technology, operations, and customer risk that we have as these projects get older.
Yeah, super interesting. Thanks for that. And Stephen, I might shift over to you and incorporate one of the Q&A that one of the Q's that's coming in here. And I'll look at you for the A. And thanks everybody on the line for that. These are coming in really well. Particularly, aging assets, and the code has developed a lot in the past decade, even in a way that can't quite keep up with developments on technology. But Stephen, you have very much internalized like this health and safety aspects of your aging fleet. And yeah, just kind of open-ended there. How have you addressed that? Are you very careful about re-energization once something's found, or what triggers a de-energization? And just generally, where's your mindset when you approach these older assets that have some of that risk?
Yeah, we've got quite a lot of older aging assets. So again, I'll start my answer with, I can mirror a lot of what Zack said. I mean, we deal with central inverters. We deal with, there's a lot of issues you deal with on an aging platform. And you touched on part of what I was going to mention was codes have changed. There's a lot safer systems now than there were 15 years ago. And we deal with it different ways, right? So triggering power down and remediation and then re-energization. There's a lot of things that can trigger that. Just a a systematic issue that we find, kind of like Zack mentioned, that cracking back sheets. You have deteriorating back sheets. If you find that it happens quite a bit on a particular make and model of a module, then we will trigger a system wide. Let's look at our entire portfolio. Where do we have those modules, and let's look at powering down, changing those modules out, and powering back up. Honestly, everything we've had is PPA. So we've got a lot of our PPAs that have reached the end of the initial contract term, and we're going back through and doing renegotiations with those providers, with the system owners, just telling them, here's our new standards. If you want to remediate, if you want to bring that system up to our current standards, then let's look at renewing a term for a little while longer. We're in a little bit more of a unique situation. I've got a lot more factors that play into what we do with an aging asset, because a lot of these are on our rooftops. So 15 years down the road, we need to re-roof the store. So that triggers a lot of times. I mean, this past year we removed almost 40 rooftop systems, across the U.S. just because the term was already up on the initial PPA agreement, and we were just kind of sliding month to month, so to speak, on those assets. And then the roofing team got a hold of me and said, "Hey, we want to re-roof that store. The roof is old. Can you move your solar?" This is generally what they say. I'm like, "Yeah, that's easier said than done. That sounds good, but let me tell you what that entails." So we ended up just terminating the contract and removed it altogether, and then we'll re-roof the store, and then we'll look at again moving forward on an ownership model. Do we think that site's going to pencil? And if so, we'll put a brand new system on it. It's not worth it to the system owner. It's not worth it to us to remediate some of these systems. It's gonna essentially, you're rebuilding a system. You're gonna come back and say we've got much more efficient modules, and that was a central inverter versus string. So we want string moving forward. We want other pieces of equipment, safety equipment, rapid response. There's a whole lot of things that have happened in the last 15 years, 20 years for some of these systems. So we're doing a lot of remove it, and then we'll build a new system at a later date.
Wow. Yeah. So effectively redeveloping these sites. And so to right, look at it from the other side of the coin, and some of our audience from those, maybe the folks that are holding that PPA with you, if that O&M, that asset management, is not hitting whatever metric, right, at the end of the PPA period, the likelihood of extending that, is lower. It can't be assumed. And so I think that's a really helpful takeaway here of just because it's up there, it doesn't mean it's always going to be.
Well,
Yeah.
I do a lot of third party engineering inspections. So we hire third party engineers, as you're aware, and have them go out and inspect these sites, and let's just show up and do it's almost kind of a surprise spot inspection. Let's just show up, and I want you to go through that entire site and give me the overall health of that site, and grade everything, and tell me how it's doing. And if it's a site that's 12, 14, 15 years old, but you come back to me and say, "Hey, this thing's been maintained really well. Everything seems to be functioning good. We deem that it's a safe asset," then we're absolutely renewing some contract. I mean, we do have a lot of sites that are that way, that are kept up pretty well, and we can let it ride longer. That's ultimately, we touched on it at the beginning, like, it's all about the money, right? To a lot of people, it's all about, is this system performing, and are the dollars and cents making sense? Are they panning out? But for me, from an asset management side, and for O&M, and for what I do for Walmart, there's way more than that. Like, I do need to make sure it's functioning. I do need to make sure it's producing, but I'm also far more concerned with the safety aspect. Is this a safe system? It's on the roof of a store, so I've got thousands of people every day that are inside that store that have no idea what's going on above them, and it's got to be safe. I've got HVAC techs and other people that get on that roof that walk around all this equipment. We can't have something arcing. We can't have an unsafe condition in any way. So there's a lot more that plays in on my plate than just is it performing and are we getting the production, the guaranteed production that was written in the contract. That's part of my job, but the other part is, and for me the more important part is the safety aspect. Are we maintaining a safe site? That's hard to do with aging assets.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Um, I think we can. I might transition us now with kind of some more of that insight on aging assets. With regard to like visibility on those as well. So I'm just going to transition us into more of a Q&A perspective here because and thank you everybody again for the questions here, but transitioning to some of the questions here that are aligned with some of the aging asset questions as well. And here below, you can see the contact information if you guys, want to reach out more or find us at AMNA in April 9th and 10th in San Diego to continue the conversation. But Zach, I might start with you here. When we take that posture of proactive asset management, and I think like particularly in older systems, how do we use monitoring and performance data to do that prescriptive or predictive maintenance for teams? How have you guys approached that where you can use monitoring platforms to better influence that?
Sure. So we most of our assets are split up between two monitoring platforms. Our asset managers, just as part of their day-to-day responsibilities, are going through and looking at the site performance, different inverter specific yields, looking at performance deltas between inverters on sites, projects, deviation from our expected, and to make it more accessible for them, we have our own internal kind of asset management software that we've built and are continuing to develop to give them one look where they can look at all of the projects that are under their management and go through and look at that performance data and use that as a jumping off point for a deeper investigation into whether it's going into the O&M provider system and looking at the open corrective work orders on a site, going through and looking at some of the historic PM reports or the most recent PM report to help get a better understanding of what the underlying issues are, if any, at the project, or also go to any of our third-party IR inspection softwares that we have, and you really use the DAS and some of the performance data to be the springboard to go and look at some of the other platforms that we have that has asset data in it. Because to Stephen's point, performance data is just one piece of the puzzle for us. There's really the safety, and then more, like I said earlier, the longer term view of, okay, this is an issue that we have now that's not really creating a huge performance impact, but what happens if it continues for 6 months, a year, if we're trying to wait to get it addressed between the PM inspections that we have on our project?
Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, and one of the other questions here was also a little bit more on um, just the role of, yeah, that system monitoring, but also a retrospective on, what were the issues plaguing the system. so that I can better inform that PM, that CM, but also like my inventory management. And so, just from our side with like SolarGrade, right? That is well documented, and you can retrospectively say, here are the major things that are affecting this portfolio. But SolarGrade hasn't been around forever. So when you guys look at like a Terraform and or like some older assets under management, how do you look back and say, here are the things that plagued it in the past. How do I move forward with like better inventory management? And so, yeah, I guess that's a Zack. I'll pass it to Zack there.
Yeah, that's a bit of a loaded question. It's almost impossible for us to look back on some of these sites. Either whatever the historic tool that the O&M provider was using never got transferred to the legacy team, or some of that data just got lost because of knowledge loss from different asset managers leaving the company. In a lot of cases on the Terraform assets specifically, we had to essentially do a restart on site history. We have performance data, but O&M records are really few and far between there. Specifically around inventory management and spare parts. Luckily, the portfolio that we have, it has relatively similar equipment intermixed throughout the different fleets that merged and became Luminace. And so with the other two portfolios that we have a lot of the legacy data there and a lot of the legacy team that understands the issues that we've had, the historic failures, some of the product availability issues, and are leveraging that information to not just look at, okay, these are the spare parts we need for Terraform, but take a more fleet-wide view and try to establish an inventory management program that we can use across all of our operating projects, because I have the same advanced energy 500 TXs and Terraform, Luminace, and Sunbeam. So luckily we have the data from the other projects to inform what we're doing.
Cool. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, right? When you have uniformity or like common parts across, a portfolio, which is common, right? I think a lot of our audience can appreciate that, where if, you know, these 50 projects in this portfolio were built in the same vintage, there probably was a lot of cut and paste. So like, let's take advantage of that and like learn from it. I have to play time cop. We're kind of at time here. And like, thanks everybody for the questions in the chat here. Reach out to us. We'll be at Solar Asset Management in North America in San Diego, April 9th and 10th. Thank you, Nicola, for having us. I'll pass it back to you. Really enjoyed the conversation today.
Yeah, thank you very much, James, and thank you, Zach and Stephen, for the great insight, great conversation. As James mentioned, feel free to reach out to the three guys here at AMNA if you have any other questions. Unfortunately, we're out of time. We couldn't cover all the many questions we received, but I'm pretty sure they're happy to answer any other questions you might have. Before we conclude the webinar, I just wanted to share with you a 10% discount code valid for 1 week if you still haven't purchased your ticket. But this is your best chance to do so. And once again, also from the attendees online, thank you very much for joining the webinar, and I look forward to seeing you all in San Diego in a couple of weeks. Thank you all.